What's up, guys? It's your boy MMA Striker back with another episode of the Monday MMA News Series, and we are back with episode 4. And we have a lot to talk about this week. We have a few questions at the end, so let's get right into it. And we're going to start by talking about the whole Conor McGregor situation, which has been crazy. So this past Saturday, Conor McGregor was reportedly arrested for sexual assault. Now, my prediction about this whole thing, or my take about it, is I don't really believe he actually assaulted somebody or sexually assaulted somebody. I think it was probably a female who saw him, knew who he was, knew he was famous, knew he was rich, and probably just try to make up some type of lie to try to scam him out of some money, to get some money out of him. Some females are like that. Some girls will try to do anything to get some money out of a famous rich celebrity. So, but we don't know the whole situation. So, but on Sunday he did post on Twitter saying that he was kind of suicidal and he was in a dark place in his life right now, which he did delete the tweets. But if they're real, I hope he gets better. I hope he gets back into a right state of mind, and I hope he's healthy, because Conor McGregor is he inspired a lot of people in and outside of the octagon. A lot of the fans today got into the sport because of Conor McGregor, whether it was his fight with Jose Aldo, or Eddie Alvarez, or the Diaz fights, or Floyd, or Khabib. Conor McGregor inspired a lot of people to start watching MMA or even to start training. And I hope he's just healthy. I hope he's okay. I hope his family is okay, and hope that everything gets better. But that's all I wanted to talk about that situation. Now it's time to talk about things MMA related, and we're going to talk about this past weekend's card and recap it. Michelle Waterson versus Angela Hill, which was a great card and a great main event. And the first two rounds, Angela Hill looked very good. She was landing the bigger shots on Michelle Waterson, even stunning Michelle Waterson. And round 3 is where Michelle Waterson started to turn things up, and Angela Hill kind of started to slow down a little bit. The grappling was the main thing that pretty much turned this fight around for Michelle Waterson. She got the takedown and pretty much held Hill down and pretty much controlled her and landed some good strikes on the ground and pretty much drained Hill's stamina. Round 4, she won that round. Her striking was starting to land a little bit more. She was starting to land strikes on Hill. Now round 5 is where the fight gets interesting and where it comes down to judging wise. Now personally, I scored it for Angela Hill. I thought she won the 5th round, but I can see an argument for Michelle Waterson winning that round. It was not a robbery, so don't start spamming robbery. But I think Angela Hill won. And what's next for these two? I think Angela Hill versus Claudia Gadelha 2 would be a good fight. She did call her out, and their first fight was a good fight. It was a close fight, so I wouldn't mind that. And for Michelle Waterson, I think Nina Ansaroff, once she gets back from her pregnancy, would be a good fight. Now, if Michelle Waterson doesn't want to wait for Nina Ansaroff to get back, then I think Marina Rodriguez would be a great fight if Michelle wants to get back in there quick. But Michelle did take a lot of damage in that fight, so I don't think she's going to be back soon. So I think Nina Ansaroff would probably be a good fight for her comeback. And on that note, I want to talk about this upcoming weekend's card, which is probably the most stacked fight night card I've ever seen. This card has a lot of fights that could be on a pay-per-view main event. No, not a main event, but main card. Yeah, of course we have the main event, Colby Covington versus Tyron Woodley. We have Cowboy Cerrone versus Nico Price in the co-main event. We have Khamzat Chimaev versus Gerald Meerstrat. I know I mispronounced that last name, but I'm just going to call him Gerald. And we have Johnny Walker versus Ryan Spann. And we have Kevin Holland versus Darren Stewart. And we also have Randa Marcos versus Mackenzie Dern. Now, all these fights are very hard to predict. I haven't even finalized my predictions yet. The only prediction I have finalized is the main event, which you will hear that on Friday in Friday's video for the prediction video. But all the fights, the main event was probably the easiest fight for me to predict. The rest is very hard to predict. Very close, competitive, stylistic matchups, and I can't wait for this card on Saturday. And of course, next week is the big one, UFC 253, Adesanya Costa, Reyes Yan, and that card, the card as a whole is pretty solid. This card reminds me of UFC 236 a lot for some reason. Like UFC 236 had 2 great title fights, but the rest of the card was okay. And this card is kind of the same. The main card before the 3 fights before the title fights is okay. They're pretty good fights. We have Brandon Royval versus Kai Kara France. And I forgot the first two fights on the main card. I'm gonna have to go back and look. But the prelims and the first three fights on the main card, they're pretty decent fights, pretty good fights. But those title fights are amazing title fights. Yan versus Reyes is going to be an amazing fight. I feel like people are counting out Yan in this fight. I feel like this fight's going to be much more competitive than people give it. And people have this weird thing about Dominic Reyes, similar to Costa, but in a different way. With Costa, people look at his muscles and his physique and think he's a one-punch knockout artist when he's more of a volume striker. But for Dominic Reyes, they think ever since he gave John Jones a great fight, they think he's just unstoppable for some reason. Like he's just the GOAT or something. But Jan Blachowicz can win this fight 100%. But the one thing I do think that's going to change his fight, and which makes me predict that Reyes is going to win this fight, is footwork. Jan doesn't really do great with footwork, but I'm not going to get too in deep by that, because I'm going to say that for the prediction video. But I do think Reyes wins the fight, but it's still a great fight. Anything can happen. And of course the main event has fight of the year potential. Paulo Costa versus Israel Adesanya. We have a sniper counter striker in Izzy versus pressure volume striker in Paulo Costa. I wouldn't even consider Paulo Costa a brawler. I know some people call him a brawler, but I consider him a volume striker, a combination style fighter who pressures a lot. And it's going to be a great fight. I cannot wait for that card. And moving on to the next topic. Now, this happened last week. This was considering Tony Ferguson and Dustin Poirier. Now, that fight is not happening at UFC 254 because the UFC and Dustin Poirier contract negotiations didn't go well at all. And Dustin wanted more money to the fight, and the UFC didn't give it to him, so the fight's off. And now, I know a lot of people are probably complaining. They're telling Dana White to pay your fighters and all that, but we don't know what the numbers were. We didn't know what Dustin was asking for. He's probably, he wasn't going to get paid top dollar to be a co-main event in a 3-round fight under Khabib. So, but like I said, we don't know how much he was asking for, so we really can't judge or criticize anyone. But Dana White did say the UFC is looking for a new opponent for Tony Ferguson. Now, I don't know if it's on 254 or it's on a different card, but if they are looking for a new opponent, I really hope they make Charles Oliveira the new opponent. That is a great fight. On the striking wise, Charles Oliveira has gotten so much better striking wise, and we all know his BJJ is top notch. Could you imagine if the fight hit the ground? You have 10th Planet BJJ versus Charles Oliveira's BJJ. That would be a great fight, and I hope they do make that fight on UFC 254. And for Dustin Poirier, what's next for him? I don't know. If he just doesn't fight Tony and Tony gets a fight, I don't know. He's gonna have to wait and maybe fight someone else. But I think they did say Dan Hooker may be an option for Tony Ferguson too, which I think that's a bad idea. I would watch the fight. I would love to see the fight because I'm a big Tony Ferguson fan. In my opinion, Tony Ferguson is the most exciting fighter in the UFC right now. But I'm gonna talk about that later. But for Dan Hooker's health-wise, he just took a war with He just had a war with Dustin Poirier a few months ago and took a lot of damage in that fight. I want to see him take some time off and recover fully. But if they do make that fight, I would most definitely be hyped for it. And speaking about the most entertaining fighters or exciting fighters in the UFC, I made a list on Twitter yesterday saying, pretty much naming my top 5 fighters that get me the most excited when they fight. And that list was, number 1, I had Tony Ferguson as the most exciting. Number 2, I had Korean Zombie. Yeah, I had Korean Zombie number 2. I forget the exact order, but I remember the fighters. I had Korean Zombie on that list. I had Petr Yan on that list. Did I have Max Holloway? I'm gonna look at the list really quickly. I don't want to waste too much time, but I'm gonna come back. I want to go back and look at the list. I forgot it was 2 fighters. I forgot I was on that list. Yeah, it was Tony Ferguson 1, Dustin Poirier 2, Korean Zombie 3, Max Holloway 4, and Petr Yan 5. To me, those are the top 5 most exciting fighters in the UFC right now. You can disagree, of course. It's subjective, it's opinionated, nobody's right, but that's my list. But let's get right into the questions because I don't want this video to be too long. So we have 3 questions. We're going to start with the first one from @CarlosAlex1803. Shout out to him. And his question is, if Colby wins against Woodley, does he deserve a title shot? To me, it pretty much depends what happens with Leon Edwards. If Leon Edwards goes and fights Wonder Boy and wins, I think Leon should get the title shot. But if Leon loses to Wonder Boy, or he doesn't accept the fight, he turns down the fight, then I think Colby should probably get it, yeah. And next question comes from Nemesis 18112. Also, shout out to him. He makes great posters and great like wallpapers, UFC posters on Twitter. So go give him a follow if you want a poster made like for a specific fighter. He makes great posters. So, but let's get into the question. He said, "Who do you think will be the champions across every weight by the end of 2021? Assuming John Jones goes to heavyweight and Khabib retires." That's gonna be hard to tell, but I'm gonna say the list. At heavyweight, I think it will be John Jones. I think Miocic beats Ngannou, then loses to Jones. Like heavyweight, I think it'll either be Reyes or Santos. Middleweight, I think it'll still be Adesanya. Welterweight, I think it's gonna be either Burns or Covington. I think Burns beats Usman, but I think he may lose to Covington. Lightweight, I think the belt's gonna be vacant, but in my opinion, it's gonna be either Tony or Dustin. I can see Dustin holding the belt. Featherweight, now this is where it gets tricky. I think it's either going to be Volkanovski or Korean Zombie. Bantamweight, I think it's going to be Petr Yan. I think he beats Aljamain Sterling pretty convincingly. I'm going to break down that fight in a separate video, but I think Petr Yan will still be the champion. Or even TJ Dillashaw, depending how TJ looks in his comeback. Flyweight, I think Figueiredo will still be the champion. Women's featherweight, Amanda Nunes. Women's bantamweight, Amanda Nunes. Women's flyweight, Shevchenko. And 115, I think it would either be Rose or Wei Li Zhang. And I think he has another question. And he says, how would you see the matchup between Justin Gaethje and Jorge Masvidal at 165 going? That's a tough fight. Jorge is bigger than Gaethje. Gaethje is, as of recently, has been much improved. It looked very good striking wise, very good counter striking. Jorge Masvidal. Now the one thing, I would give the cardio to Jorge, but that's kind of tough too. But I would give the cardio to Jorge. Grappling wise, it's hard to tell because Justin Gaethje has not used his grappling in MMA, so we don't really know who's the better grappler. But striking wise, I would probably give the striking to Jorge. I see Jorge using his roundhouse kick to the body, which in my opinion is one of the best kicks in MMA. Jorge has a really good roundhouse kick to the body. In the clinch, I think Jorge could win this fight. I think that's where he wants to fight at, is in the clinch. Jorge is very good in the clinch, and I see him landing a lot of shots on Justin Gaethje in the clinch, and I see him getting a late finish. Also, I see Jorge countering Gaethje a lot. I see Gaethje may initiate a firefight, and I see Jorge slipping and countering and catching him. Now, my prediction for that fight, I think Jorge will win either a late TKO or a decision. But that's going to do it for this episode, guys. Make sure to comment down below your thoughts on everything that's been going on in MMA. And make sure to like this video and subscribe. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Have a good day.